One Last Cigarette, Episode 3, The Ashtray Problem. Martin Voss began to hate the phrase "just one more thing" in the way civilized men hated vulgarity, quietly, deeply, and with a private sense of insult. The first time Columbo said it, Martin had found it almost amusing, a harmless tick, like a child stuttering. The second time, it had become an annoyance. By the third, Martin started hearing it before it was spoken, as if the words were already waiting in the air, attached to Columbo like smoke. Martin had always believed the world was manageable if one understood its rules. Money had rules. Corporations had rules. Courts had rules. People had rules too, though many of them pretended otherwise. People wanted recognition. People wanted comfort. People wanted to be thought decent, even when they weren't. Martin used those wants the way a good pianist used keys, without thinking. But Columbo did not play the same instrument. Columbo did not push. He hovered. He did not demand. He returned. And nothing in Martin's world was more irritating than a man who refused to be intimidated by elegance. The office had been quiet that morning, unusually so, as though even the walls were aware that Victor Brennan's death had altered the atmosphere. Executives moved with a new caution. Assistants whispered. People smiled at Martin with a kind of sympathy that made him want to wash his hands. He had just ended a meeting, merger-related, naturally. Death did not pause business, it merely made it awkward, when Lisa Delgado announced, with visible reluctance, "Lieutenant Columbo is here again." Martin did not look up. He simply closed the file folder, placed it precisely at the center of his desk, and said, "Send him in." Columbo entered like a man who had been invited to a wedding and arrived by accident at a funeral. His coat looked older than it should have, his tie slightly wrong, his hair as if it had argued with the comb and won. "Mr. Voss," Columbo said warmly, as though they were friends who met every week. "I'm sorry. I know you're busy." Martin offered the smile he offered to unpleasant clients, polite, thin, contained. "Lieutenant. What is it now?" Columbo blinked, as if surprised by how sharp the question sounded. It's nothing big," he said. I got a couple things I can't stop thinking about." Martin's voice was calm. "Then stop thinking about them." Columbo smiled apologetically. "Yeah. My wife says that too." Martin gestured to the chair. Columbo did not sit immediately. He looked at the office, its quiet wealth, its glass, its framed photographs of handshakes with men who appeared important. Columbo's gaze lingered on a picture of Martin and Victor Brennan smiling at a banquet, champagne raised, the kind of picture designed to prove friendship publicly. Columbo nodded at it. "That was a good night." Martin's mouth tightened. "Yes." Columbo sat, finally, but not like a man settling in. More like a man who might stand up again any second. "You know," Columbo began, "I've been thinking about that lighter of yours." Martin's eyes narrowed. "The one you found?" Columbo nodded. "Yeah. Beautiful piece. Gold. Initials. Must mean a lot." Martin's voice remained smooth. "Victor gave it to me. Years ago." Columbo nodded slowly. "So it's sentimental?" "Yes." Columbo leaned forward slightly, like a man about to confess something foolish. "Then it's funny you didn't notice it was missing." Martin's jaw tightened. "I did notice." Columbo blinked. "Oh. You did." Martin realized his mistake instantly. He corrected. "I mean, I noticed later. After you showed it to me." Columbo nodded, as if relieved not to catch him in something. Sure. He paused. "Mr. Voss, if you didn't smoke in the study, why did you take the lighter out of your pocket at all?" Martin stared. "I didn't take it out. I must have dropped it. I don't know." Columbo nodded sympathetically. "Sometimes people fidget," he offered. "When they're nervous." Martin's eyes sharpened. "I wasn't nervous." Columbo smiled faintly. "No, you're right. You don't seem like a nervous man." Martin exhaled through his nose. Lieutenant, is there a purpose to this? Columbo nodded quickly. Yeah, there is. I'm trying to understand the night. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, flipped it open, and looked down as if reading a grocery list. You said you arrived at Victor's house around 9, Columbo said. Yes, Martin replied. And you left around 10. Yes. Columbo nodded. Okay. He looked up, mild. But your secretary said you left here at 8. Martin's face remained composed, but something in his posture shifted, an almost imperceptible tightening. Columbo watched it, gentle as ever, as though he had not noticed. Lisa Delgado, Columbo said, as if recalling her name with effort. Nice lady. She said she logged you out. 8 o'clock. Martin's voice cooled. My secretary is mistaken. Columbo blinked. Mistaken? Yes, Martin said. People get times wrong. Columbo nodded, agreeable. Yeah, they do. Especially under stress. Martin's eyes narrowed. What stress? Columbo looked embarrassed, as though he had said too much. Oh, nothing. Just the company, the merger, the whole situation. Martin leaned forward slightly. Lieutenant, I left my office when I said I did. Columbo nodded quickly. Sure. He paused, then asked, softly, did you stop anywhere before you went to the Brennan house? Martin hesitated. No. Columbo nodded. No. Martin's tone sharpened. What is this? You're trying to trap me in a timeline. Columbo raised his hands. Oh no. No. I'm not trapping. I'm just checking. He hesitated, then smiled. You know what my wife says? She says I'm like a dog with a bone. Not because I'm tough. Because I'm annoying. Martin's face hardened. Lieutenant, you are annoying. Columbo nodded, pleased, as if that were a compliment. Yeah, he said. That's what solves cases. Martin's patience thinned. You have no proof of anything. Columbo nodded. No. Not yet. He looked down at his notebook again, then back up. Mr. Voss, can I ask you something about the ashtray? Martin frowned. The ashtray. Columbo nodded. Yeah. In Victor's study. The crystal one. Martin's voice was clipped. What about it? Columbo's tone became almost conversational, like a man talking about table settings. It was spotless. Martin shrugged. Maybe the housekeeper cleaned it. Columbo nodded. Housekeeper left at 6. Martin's eyes narrowed. So? Columbo smiled faintly. So between 6 and, when Patricia found Victor, somebody cleaned that ashtray. Martin's jaw tightened. Why would that matter? Columbo leaned forward slightly, soft voice, gentle eyes. Because Victor didn't smoke. Patricia said so. You said so. Everybody said so. Martin said nothing. Columbo continued, so if Victor didn't smoke, why is there an ashtray on his desk at all? Martin's eyes flickered. Decorative. Columbo nodded. Decorative. Sure. A crystal ashtray as decoration. That's very classy. He paused, then added, but then why is there a Sobranie burning in it the night he dies? Martin's voice was tight. I told you, I don't know. Columbo nodded. Okay. He leaned back, as if thinking. Then he leaned forward again, like a man who couldn't help himself. Mr. Voss, Columbo said softly, where would Victor get a Sobranie? Martin stared. Columbo continued, it's not a common cigarette. It's not something you buy at a gas station. So either Victor kept them, which he didn't, or somebody brought them into the house. Martin's expression stiffened. You're implying I brought them. Columbo shook his head quickly. Oh no. No. I'm not implying. I'm just saying, if somebody did bring them, it would be someone who smoked them. Martin's voice was cold. Many people smoke many brands. Columbo nodded. Sure. He looked down, then up again, mild curiosity. Do you keep Sobranies at home? Martin hesitated, then said, possibly. Columbo nodded. Possibly. Martin's irritation broke through. Lieutenant, are you going to search my home now? Count cigarettes? Columbo smiled apologetically. Oh no. No, no. I'm not gonna count. I'm not good with numbers. Martin stared. Columbo added, but if you did have them, and one of them ended up on Victor's desk, that would be a coincidence. Martin's voice sharpened. And you don't like coincidences? Columbo blinked, as if surprised Martin remembered. No, he said softly. I don't. Martin rose from his chair abruptly. This interview is over. Columbo stood too, slowly, not challenging, just following. Martin said coldly, if you want to accuse me, do it. If you don't have evidence, stop harassing me. Columbo nodded quickly. You're right. You're right, Mr. Voss. He turned as if to leave, then paused in the doorway, hand on the frame, posture hesitant. Martin watched him, already bracing. Columbo looked back. Just one more thing, he said. Martin's face tightened. What? Columbo's voice was almost gentle enough to be mistaken for kindness. You said Victor didn't allow smoking in the study. Martin nodded once, irritated. Yes. Columbo tilted his head. That's interesting to me. Because if Victor didn't allow smoking, then if somebody did smoke in that room, it would mean they weren't worried about Victor's rules anymore. Martin stared. Columbo added softly, or it would mean Victor wasn't alive to enforce them. Martin's eyes widened a fraction. Columbo smiled apologetically. Sorry. I'm thinking out loud. He left, and Martin Voss stood alone in his office with the uncomfortable sensation that a man with a cheap coat had just slapped him without touching him. That evening, Columbo returned to the Brennan house again, not with drama, not with warrants, not with a team. Just himself, his coat, and that quiet insistence that made people feel as if resisting him would be impolite. Patricia Brennan met him at the door with tired eyes. Lieutenant, she said, you're here a lot. Columbo smiled. Yeah. My wife says I'm never home. Patricia's mouth tightened. What do you want? Columbo held up a hand. Nothing big. I wanted to see the study again. Patricia hesitated, then nodded. All right. They walked down the hall. Patricia stopped outside the study door. Columbo looked at the lock. He said softly, Mrs. Brennan, the door locks from the inside, right? Yes, she said. And you used the spare key from the kitchen? Yes. Columbo nodded. Okay. He stepped inside, walking slowly, as though the room might speak if he did not startle it. He approached the desk. He looked at the ashtray again. It was still clean. Not as clean as it had been the night of the death. Cleaning crews had been through, and rich homes cleaned grief the way they cleaned dust, but something about its original cleanliness had stayed in Columbo's mind like a wrong note in music. Patricia watched him. Columbo spoke softly. Mrs. Brennan, did Victor ever keep cigarettes in the house? Even after he quit? Patricia shook her head. No. Columbo nodded. No hidden stash? No. Columbo looked at her gently. Because I've seen that. Men quit for their wives, but they keep one pack somewhere. Like a secret apology. Patricia's voice was sharp. Victor wouldn't. Columbo nodded. Okay. Patricia's face tightened. Lieutenant, why are you asking me this? Columbo's eyes stayed gentle. Because if there were no cigarettes in the house, then that cigarette came from outside. Patricia's mouth tightened. From Martin. Columbo did not confirm. He did not deny. He simply asked, did you ever see Martin Voss smoke? Patricia hesitated. Sometimes. Not in the house. Columbo nodded. Okay. Patricia's voice lowered. He's careful around me because of my asthma. Columbo nodded again, thinking. Patricia added, almost involuntarily, Victor installed soundproofing in this room years ago, so he could work without disturbing me. Columbo blinked. Soundproofing. Patricia nodded. Yes. Columbo looked at her. So, if a gun went off in here, you wouldn't hear it upstairs. Patricia's face tightened. No. Columbo's voice remained soft. But you said you heard a loud sound at 10:45. Patricia froze. Columbo watched her carefully. He did not move. He did not press immediately. He allowed the silence to expand until it became uncomfortable. Patricia swallowed. I thought I heard something. Columbo nodded. Okay. Patricia's eyes narrowed, defensive. What are you implying? Columbo raised a hand, apologetic. Nothing. I'm just trying to understand. He stepped back, as if the room had shifted. Mrs. Brennan, he said gently, I'm gonna ask you something and it's gonna sound strange. Patricia's voice was tense. What? Columbo's tone was mild. When you came downstairs, and you found the study door locked, did you try the handle first? Yes, Patricia said quickly. It was locked. Columbo nodded. And then you went to the kitchen drawer and got the spare key. Yes. Columbo nodded again. And you unlocked the door. Yes. Columbo's gaze drifted to the lock again. Do you know if you can lock it from the outside with that spare key? Patricia stared. Of course you can unlock it. Columbo smiled faintly. Yeah, but can you lock it? Patricia hesitated. I don't know. Columbo nodded as if that were perfectly understandable. That's okay. He paused, then said softly, because if you can lock it from the outside, then it's not a locked room suicide anymore. Patricia's face paled. Columbo quickly softened. Oh, now. I'm not saying that happened. I'm just checking possibilities. Patricia's voice trembled. You think Martin killed him? Columbo looked at her gently. I think somebody staged something, he said. And the person who staged it knew your house, knew your routines, knew where the spare key was. Patricia's eyes flickered. Columbo's voice remained mild. And Martin Voss, he's been here dozens of times. Patricia did not answer. Columbo nodded softly, as if he understood her silence. Then he did what he always did at the end of a conversation. He smiled apologetically. Thank you, Mrs. Brennan. You've been very helpful. Patricia's voice was tight. Lieutenant. Columbo turned. Yes. Patricia swallowed. Please, end this. Columbo's eyes were kind. I'm trying, he said softly. That's why I keep coming back. The following morning, Columbo visited Sheila Grant downtown. Her office was functional, bright, professional. No mahogany, no crystal, no polite lies disguised as decor. The kind of place where people dealt in facts because facts were cheaper than illusions. Sheila Grant was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, calm, and not easily impressed by men who carried badges or money. She stood when Columbo entered, shook his hand, and studied him for half a second as if deciding whether he was a real detective or a character from a story. Lieutenant Columbo, she said. I expected someone would come. Columbo nodded, mildly embarrassed. Yeah. Sorry to bother you. Sheila Saturday. It's not a bother. Victor Brennan hired me. He's dead. That's relevant. Columbo nodded. He hired you to investigate his partner. Sheila's eyes stayed steady. Yes. Columbo hesitated, then said gently, was Martin Voss stealing from him? Sheila did not dramatize. She did not smile. She said it the way one said the sky was blue. Yes, she said. Over the last 2 years, approximately 3 million. Fake vendor invoices. Offshore routing. Clever, but not clever enough. Columbo exhaled softly. 3 million. Sheila nodded. Victor confronted him. Or intended to. Columbo's eyes narrowed slightly. When did you give Victor the report? Day before he died, Sheila said. He was furious. Columbo nodded. And you didn't tell anyone else? No, Sheila said. Victor insisted on confidentiality. Columbo leaned forward slightly. Could Martin Voss have known you were investigating? Sheila nodded. Possibly, if he monitored internal access. Columbo nodded slowly, as if a picture were assembling. Sheila's voice remained calm. Lieutenant, I assume you're building a murder case. Columbo blinked. I'm trying. Sheila watched him. You look like the kind of man who wins by being underestimated. Columbo smiled faintly. Yeah, he said. That's what my wife says. Sheila paused. If you need my report, I have copies. Columbo nodded. I will. Thank you. Sheila leaned back. And Lieutenant, be careful. Columbo blinked. Careful. Sheila nodded. Men like Martin Voss don't panic loudly. They panic neatly. Columbo nodded slowly. Yeah, he said softly. That's what scares me. Back at the station, Columbo laid the pieces out in his head like cards. The lighter, wiped, initials, near window. The cigarette, sobriety, timed, staged. The ashtray, spotless. The money, embezzlement, motive. The timeline, secretary says 8, Voss says 8:30, Patricia says 9. The spare key, accessible. All neat. Too neat. Columbo knew what the neatness meant. It meant someone had planned the surface. But no one could plan the underside forever. There were always small betrayals. Small habits. Small instincts. A hand that reached for a lighter at the wrong time. A story told too smoothly. A detail over-explained. Columbo leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling as if the ceiling might confess. Sergeant Hayes walked in and tossed a file on the desk. Phone records, Hayes said. Victor Brennan called Martin Voss 3 times the day of the murder. Last call at 7:45. 4 minutes. Columbo's eyes sharpened slightly. 7:45. Hayes nodded. Patricia says Victor was upset after that call. Columbo blinked. Upset how? Hayes shrugged. Angry. Pacing. Told her he needed to handle something. Columbo nodded slowly. Handle something. Hayes leaned in. You want to bring Voss in? Columbo shook his head. Not yet. Hayes frowned. Why not? Columbo smiled faintly. Because I'm gonna do something worse, he said. Hayes stared. What? Columbo's eyes were calm. I'm gonna annoy him, he said. Hayes sighed. You already are. Columbo nodded. Yeah, he said softly. But now I'm gonna do it with purpose. That night, Martin Voss sat alone in his apartment, staring at the city lights. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then put it down without answering. He poured himself a drink and did not drink it. He walked to the window and watched the traffic far below like a living organism. Slow, constant, indifferent. He whispered to himself, it was perfect. Then he heard Columbo's voice in his memory, mild and apologetic. Just one more thing. Martin's hand tightened around the glass. He did not know it yet, but the ashtray problem was already working on him. Because the ashtray was not just evidence. It was an insult. It was a reminder that no matter how expensive your world was, one small, overlooked detail could pull the whole thing apart. And Martin Voss, neat, controlled, polished, could not stand the idea that his perfection might be undone by something as trivial as ash.